You want me to choose between this ranch and that woman? Cole Bennett's voice came out low and absolute, the kind of voice that doesn't rise because it doesn't need to. Then I choose her. Every single time. The stranger across the table had just offered him $50,000, enough to bury every debt Silver Creek Ranch had ever carried. Enough to save everything Cole's father had built and everything his brother had died loving. Enough to finally breathe again. Cole picked up the envelope, walked to the stove, dropped it in the fire. He hadn't planned to fall in love with his cook. But some things don't ask permission before they change a man forever. Before we begin, if this is your first time here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button and follow Clara and Cole's story all the way through to the end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from right now. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. Now let's get into it. The Silver Creek Ranch ad had run for 3 weeks before Clara Whitmore answered it. Cook wanted. Room and board provided. References preferred, but not required. Silver Creek Ranch, Harlow County, Montana. Apply in person or by post. 14 words. No warmth, no welcome. Just the bare bones of a desperate situation dressed up as a job offer. Clara read those 14 words twice, standing at a post office counter in Billings with numb fingers and a carpet bag she'd repacked so many times the leather handle had worn smooth. She folded the clipping into her coat pocket. She bought a one-way ticket on the evening stage north. She didn't write ahead. She didn't send references. She simply arrived. The stagecoach rolled into Harlow just after dark on a Tuesday in early December, and Clara stepped down into 4 inches of fresh snow, carrying a faded carpet bag in one hand and a cast-iron recipe box in the other, the kind of box that looked like it had survived things its owner preferred not to name. The driver tossed her second bag down from the roof without ceremony. "You sure this is your stop, ma'am?" he said, peering up the dark road toward a ranch gate barely visible in the distance. "Ain't much out that way." "I'm sure," Clara said. She picked up her bag. She started walking. Cole Bennett heard the knock at the bunkhouse door at 9:15 and figured it was one of his hands coming to quit. That was the rhythm of Silver Creek these days. Somebody knocked. Somebody left. The ranch got a little smaller, a little quieter, a little further gone. He opened the door, expecting Hector Reyes, who had been gathering nerve for 2 weeks. Instead, he found a woman he had never seen before, standing in the snow in a dark wool coat, with her chin level and her eyes direct and dry. "Mr. Bennett," she said. Not a question, not an introduction. Just a statement, like she already knew who he was and had already decided it didn't frighten her. "My name is Clara Whitmore. I've come about the cook position." Cole looked at her for a long moment. She looked back. She didn't fidget, didn't smile, didn't apologize for the hour or for showing up unannounced. She just stood there in the cold, with snowflakes settling in her hair, like she had all the patience in the world and none of the anxiety. "It's 9 o'clock at night," Cole said. "I'm aware of that," she said. "Stage only runs once a week up from Billings." "I know that too." "References." She reached into her coat and produced a folded paper. He took it without looking at it. "Can you cook for 12 men?" he said. "I can cook for 20, she said. "Though I hope your hands eat less than ranch hands I've known, or you'll need to increase your flour budget considerably." Something shifted in Cole's expression. Not a smile. Cole Bennett hadn't smiled in 2 years, and the muscles for it had gone stiff from disuse. But something moved behind his eyes, a flicker of recognition maybe. The sight of a person who was still standing. "There's a room above the kitchen," he said finally. "Small, gets cold." "I've been cold before," Clara said. He stepped back from the door. She walked in. The next morning, Clara rose before anyone else on the ranch, before the roosters, before the wranglers, before Cole himself, who had the insomniac's habit of rising at 4 and sitting alone in the dark with a cup of coffee he never finished. He came down to the kitchen to find it already occupied. Clara had already started a fire in the big iron stove, already had a pot of coffee going, already had 2 loaves of bread rising near the heat, and a skillet of potatoes and onions spitting gently in the pan. The whole kitchen smelled like something a person wanted to walk toward. Cole stopped in the doorway. Clara glanced up from the cutting board where she was working through a side of bacon with quick practice strokes. "Coffee's ready," she said. "Cups are on the shelf." Cole got his own cup. He poured his own coffee. He sat down at the end of the kitchen table and watched her work without saying a single word, and she let him watch without explaining herself or asking what he thought. And in that silence, something was established between them that neither of them had a name for yet. By the time the ranch hands came in for breakfast, stomping snow off their boots, red-faced from the cold, already half resigned to another gray morning of hard ground, and harder odds, the table was set, and the food was hot, and there was enough of it. Hector Reyes, who had in fact quit twice in his head already that week, sat down and looked at his plate and said, "Lord Almighty." "Eat before it cools," Clara said, and went back to the stove. Nobody on Silver Creek Ranch had eaten a meal like that in 2 years. Cole sat at the head of the table and watched his men eat and heard something he had genuinely forgotten: the sound of men talking to each other between bites, laughing at small things, elbowing each other for the breadbasket, making noise the way people do when they have a reason to. He thought about his brother Daniel, who used to sit at this same table and eat 3 plates of everything and tell stories that went on twice as long as they needed to and somehow never got old. He pushed the thought down. He always pushed it down. That was the only way he'd learned to keep moving. After breakfast, he found Clara already washing dishes. "That was adequate," he said. Clara turned from the sink and looked at him with an expression so flat and unimpressed that Cole actually felt something like embarrassment. "Adequate," she repeated. "Better than adequate. High praise, Mr. Bennett." "Cole," he said, and he wasn't entirely sure why he said it, because he hadn't told anyone to call him Cole in years. Clara turned back to the dishes. "Cole," she said, just once, like she was testing the weight of it. The first week passed the way all Montana winters pass relentlessly, without apology, the cold pressing in from every direction at once. But something had changed on Silver Creek. It was small things at first, the kind of things a man might miss if he wasn't paying attention. The kitchen curtains, which had been gray with dust and hanging crooked for a year, were washed and rehung straight. Cole noticed this on a Wednesday morning and had no idea how to react to it. Young Billy Strand, the 16-year-old stable boy who slept in the back room of the bunkhouse and had the nervous energy of a dog that had been kicked too many times, was seen sitting at the kitchen table on Thursday afternoon, while Clara worked moving his finger slowly across the pages of a worn spelling primer. "Is she teaching him to read?" Hector Reyes asked Cole in a low voice. "Apparently," Cole said. "Who asked her to do that?" "Nobody." Hector looked at the kitchen window for a moment. "Huh," he said. On Friday, Clara went into the kitchen garden, which was nothing but frozen dirt and dead stalks, and began turning the soil with a spade in the middle of a cold morning. Cole watched her from the fence for a full 10 minutes before he walked over. "Ground's frozen," he said. "I know. Nothing's going to grow in December." "I know that too." "Then why?" Clara stopped, looked up at him. Her breath came out in small, visible clouds in the cold air. "Even dead ground wants another chance," she said. "You have to remind it somebody believes it's still capable." Cole had no answer for that. He walked away, but he thought about it for the rest of the day. Audience retention hook, 8 minutes. What nobody on Silver Creek knew yet was the thing Clara carried with her everywhere she went, not in the carpet bag, not in the cast iron recipe box, but folded inside a hidden seam in the lining of her coat. A name, a ledger number, a description of a crime so large it had swallowed entire towns, and the certainty that the man responsible would never stop looking for her. Not ever. The second week brought a confrontation nobody expected. Wade Coulter was Cole's oldest hand, 48 years old, wide-shouldered, with the particular arrogance of a man who had been the loudest voice in a room for so long he'd forgotten it was ever any other way. He didn't like Clara. He said so plainly, the way Wade Coulter said most things, which was without any concern for whether anyone wanted to hear it. "Women got no business running a ranch kitchen," he told Hector one morning, loud enough that the words carried easily to where Clara stood. "Especially one that nobody knows nothing about. She showed up out of nowhere with a piece of paper anybody could have written. Cole's losing his mind taking her on like this." Clara set down the bread knife she was holding. She wiped her hands on her apron. She walked to the kitchen door and opened it. "Mr. Coulter," she said. Wade turned. "You have a problem with the food," she said. Wade's jaw worked. "I got a problem with the food," Clara repeated. Quiet. Steady. "Do you have a problem with the food, yes or no?" A long pause. "No," Wade said at last. "Then I suggest you eat it," Clara said, "and keep the rest of your opinions where they'll do less damage." She went back inside. The kitchen was dead silent. Then Billy Strand, who had been listening from behind his primer with enormous eyes, made a sound in the back of his throat that was half cough, half laugh, and quickly covered his mouth. By the time Cole heard the story from Hector that evening, something shifted again behind his eyes. That same flicker, warmer this time. "She say anything else?" he asked. "No, sir," Hector said. "Didn't need to." Mini climax, 12 minutes. The first twist. It happened on a Sunday 2 weeks after Clara's arrival. Cole was in the barn after supper when he heard hoofbeats coming up the main road, a single rider moving fast, which was unusual enough in a Montana winter to make him step outside. The rider was a man he didn't recognize. Broad hat, long coat, the kind of stillness that comes from long practice, sitting in saddles on long roads. The man pulled up at the gate, didn't dismount. "Looking for a woman," the man said. "Came through on the Tuesday stage a couple weeks back. Dark hair. Quiet. Might have given a false name." Cole kept his expression level. "Lot of women take the stage," he said. "Not many traveling alone in December to a ranch in the middle of nowhere." The man said pleasantly, "Ranch cook, maybe?" Cole looked at him for a long 3 seconds. "My cook came with references," Cole said. "Been here 12 years. Family of mine." The man's eyes moved slowly across the front of the house, taking inventory. "Well," he said, "if you happen to hear of someone matching that description, dark hair, quiet, maybe carrying a tin box of some kind, there's a reward being offered. Substantial one." "I'll keep my ears open," Cole said. The rider looked at him a moment longer. Then he turned the horse and rode back down the road. Cole stood and watched until the sound of hoofbeats disappeared. Then he went inside and straight to the kitchen. Clara was at the table reading by lamplight. She looked up the moment he walked in, not startled but alert in that particular way of someone who had learned to read doorways. "Who was that?" she said. Cole pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. He put his arms on the table. He looked at her directly. "Talk to me," he said. Clara held his gaze for a long moment. Then she closed her book. And she told him the truth. Not all of it, not yet, but enough. Enough to explain the way she slept light. The way she always sat with her back to the wall. The way she'd been running for 2 years under names that weren't her own from a man with the kind of power that made law enforcement look the other way. His name was Vincent Hale. Railroad money, political connections, a network of men who did exactly what they were told. Clara had worked as his bookkeeper for 18 months before she understood what she was actually recording. "I found the accounts," she said. "The real ones, not the ones he showed the banks." Her voice stayed even. "Immigrant workers brought in on labor contracts that didn't exist. Money moving through shell companies. At least 2 deaths he paid to make look like accidents." "And you documented it," Cole said. "I copied what I could." "Where is it?" Clara looked at him. "Safe," she said. "For now." Cole was quiet for a moment. "That rider tonight," he said. "That was one of Hale's men." "Yes." "Which means he knows you're in this county." "Possibly." "Which means he'll be back." Clara didn't answer. She didn't have to. Cole leaned back in his chair. He looked at the ceiling for a long moment, and the whole weight of Silver Creek, the debt, the drought, the empty bunkhouse beds, the burned-out years, settled across his shoulders all at once. Then he looked back at her. "You're not going anywhere," he said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a kindness offered. It was a statement of fact delivered in the same flat, direct voice he used for everything, but underneath it, something Clara hadn't heard pointed in her direction in a very long time. Certainty. "Mr. Bennett." "Cole." A pause. "Cole," she said carefully. "You don't know what you'd be walking into. I know what kind of man sends riders in December to find one woman traveling alone," Cole said. "That's enough." Audience retention hook, 8 to 10 minutes. What Cole Bennett didn't say, what he couldn't have said out loud, not yet. Maybe not for a long time was the thing he had understood. In the exact moment Clara closed her book and looked at him across that kitchen table. This woman had been carrying something enormous entirely alone. For 2 years, without breaking, without asking anyone for help, without once letting it show on her face in a room full of strangers. Cole had spent 2 years believing his own grief made him the loneliest person on Silver Creek Ranch. He was beginning to reconsider that. The days after the rider's visit changed the rhythm of the ranch without anyone saying so directly. 2 of Cole's men started rotating a quiet watch at the front gate after dark. Just habit, they told each other, though everyone understood. Hector Reyes began sleeping with his rifle within arm's reach. Billy Strand, who noticed most things because quiet people always do, stopped asking questions, but started looking at every person who rode up the road with a wariness beyond his 16 years. And Clara cooked. She cooked through all of it, the tension, the watchful evenings, the men who came to the table earlier now and stayed later, drawn by something they couldn't name, but none of them wanted to give up. She made venison stew with dried herbs she'd brought in her recipe box. She made cornbread that came out of the oven in the shape of a skillet and smelled like something you wanted to eat, standing right there beside the stove. She made apple preserves from a jar she'd carried in her bag all the way from Billings, and she spread them on bread for Billy on a cold afternoon and didn't say anything about it, just set the plate down and kept moving. Billy ate the whole thing in 4 bites and stared at the empty plate for a moment, like he was surprised by it. "My ma used to make this," he said. "I know," Clara said, though she couldn't have known, because Billy had never told her anything about his mother. Billy looked up at her. His eyes were bright in a way that had nothing to do with age. "How?" he said. Clara looked at him. "Because people who make things this way learned it from someone who loved them," she said. "And the love stays in the recipe." Billy didn't say anything, but he picked up his primer and started working through his letters again faster than before. 3 weeks after her arrival, Cole came to the kitchen late after midnight and found Clara sitting at the table with a candle and the tin recipe box open in front of her. She wasn't looking at recipes. She was looking at a folded piece of paper. She heard him come in, and her hand moved fast, reflexive, and the paper disappeared. Cole sat down without being invited. "I'm not going to ask you for it," he said. Clara's hand stayed flat on the table. "The evidence," Cole continued. "I'm not asking. I don't need to read it. I believe you." A long pause settled between them. "Why?" Clara said. The word came out more raw than she intended. Cole thought about this honestly. "Because lying would be easier," he said. "And you don't look like someone who's been taking the easy road." Clara was quiet for a long time after that. Then she said very quietly, "He had a man killed, in Cheyenne, someone who tried to help me." Cole didn't move. "He was a postal clerk," Clara said. 53 years old. Had a wife and 2 daughters. All he did was agree to mail something for me." Her voice stayed steady. She'd told this to herself so many times the words had gone smooth from use. They found him in the river 3 days later. "I'm sorry," Cole said. "I am too." A pause. "I've been sorry for 2 years. It doesn't change anything." Cole looked at the tin box, at Clara's hands, at the candle throwing unsteady light across her face. "It changes what you do next," he said. Clara looked at him. "It means you don't stop," Cole said. "Because stopping would make it mean nothing. And that postal clerk, his wife, his daughters, they deserve it to mean something." Clara's jaw tightened. Her eyes were very still. "You sound very certain," she said. "I've been wrong about a lot of things," Cole said. "I'm not wrong about this." Major twist. 10 to 12 minutes. On a Friday morning, 4 weeks after Clara arrived, a telegram came to the ranch. Cole read it twice, standing at the front door. He walked directly to the kitchen. "Clara." She turned from the stove. She read his expression before she read the telegram. She'd always been faster at reading faces than words, which was what had kept her alive. "What is it?" she said, not a question. Cole handed her the paper. The telegram was from a man named Earl Bridges in Denver, a federal investigator Cole had written to quietly 2 weeks earlier without telling anyone. It was 4 lines long. "Do not trust local law. Hale's network extends to Harlow County Sheriff. Your ranch is being watched. Get the woman and the evidence out. Come to Denver. Come fast." Clara read it once. Then she set it down on the counter. "He got to the sheriff," she said. "Looks that way." "Which means every lawman in this county knows you're here," Cole said. "Yes." The kitchen was very quiet. "Cole," Clara said carefully, "if Hale knows where I am, and he has the sheriff—" "He'll move soon," Cole said. "Before I have time to go above the county to someone he doesn't own." Clara pressed her hand flat against the counter. "I have to leave," she said. "Tonight, if I take the evidence to Denver myself." "We," Cole said. Clara looked at him. "We take it to Denver," he said. "Cole, this isn't your fight." Cole was quiet for just a moment. "It became my fight," he said, "the night I opened that door." He said it simply, without drama. The way a man states something he already figured out days ago and just hadn't found the words for until now. Clara looked at him for a long, still moment, and something happened in her face. Not a collapse, not relief. Nothing so easy as that. Something more complicated. Like a person who has carried a thing so long they've forgotten what their own hands feel like without it and have just been reminded. "All right," she said very quietly. "Good," Cole said. "Start packing what you need. I'll talk to Hector." He was already moving toward the door. "Cole." He stopped. Clara was looking at the tin box, at the paper still folded inside it. "Whatever happens in Denver," she said, "whatever it costs, I need you to understand that I didn't come here to put your ranch in danger. I didn't come here to put your men in danger." "I know that," Cole said. "I came here because I was running out of places to go," she said. There was no self-pity in it. Just honesty, plain and clean. Cole turned fully around. He looked at her. "Well," he said, "you stopped running." And then he walked out. Hector Reyes had been with Cole Bennett for 11 years. He had seen Cole bury his father. He had seen Cole carry his younger brother Daniel out of a rodeo arena on a night that split Silver Creek Ranch into 2 halves the years before and everything after. He had watched Cole go quiet in the way some men go quiet permanently, sealing off room after room inside themselves until only the necessary ones remained open. Work, orders, sleep, repeat. So when Cole came to the bunkhouse that Friday morning and sat down across from Hector and laid the telegram flat on the table between them, Hector read it without speaking. Then he read it a second time. Then he set it down and looked at his boss with the measured calm of a man who had long since decided that wherever Cole Bennett went, he would follow. How bad? Hector said. Bad enough, Cole said. Hale's got the sheriff, which means we can't call for any help inside this county and trust it actually comes. How long do you think we have before someone moves on the ranch? Cole was quiet for a moment. Days. Maybe less if they think we're about to run. Hector nodded slowly. And the woman. She's not going anywhere without protection, Cole said. And the evidence she's carrying is the only thing that can bring this whole network down. We get that to Denver to federal investigators, and Hale loses everything. Hector was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something Cole didn't expect. She's a good woman, Cole. Cole didn't answer. I mean it, Hector said. 11 years I've been on this ranch and I haven't seen it feel like this since before Daniel. He paused. She did that. Without being asked. Without making a production of it. He picked up his coffee cup and set it back down. Whatever she's carrying, she earned somebody standing next to her. Cole stood up from the table. Start a rotation on the perimeter, he said. 2 men alternating dusk to dawn. Don't tell them everything. Just tell them we've had word of cattle thieves working the county. And Denver. I'm working on it, Cole said. Give me a few days. He walked back to the main house. Behind him, Hector sat for a moment longer, then put on his coat and went out to find the men. The ranch had work to do. So did everyone on it. The days that followed had a strange double quality to them, ordinary on the surface, and tightly wound underneath like a watch spring. Someone had kept turning past the point. It should have stopped. Clara cooked and cleaned and taught and planted and kept the rhythm of Silver Creek running the way she always had. The hands ate and worked and kept their watch and pretended not to notice the extra care being taken at the gate. Billy Strand carried on with his primer and had moved from single letters to full short words, a development that gave him an air of quiet dignity entirely out of proportion to his age. And Cole watched all of it. He had always been a man who watched. Daniel used to say Cole had the eyes of someone taking inventory at all times, cataloging what was solid, what was cracked, what needed tending before it gave way completely. For 2 years, what those eyes had found at Silver Creek was mostly loss. Empty beds, worn-down fences, a kitchen that smelled like nothing because nothing worth smelling was being made in it. Now his inventory kept returning the same results, and he didn't know entirely what to do with them. The curtains were clean. The table was set every night before supper. Billy was learning to read. Hector laughed at meals again. A real laugh, the kind that startled out of a man, before he can decide whether it's appropriate. Wade Coulter, who had waged a sullen 3-day campaign of pointed silences after his confrontation with Clara, had been seen on Tuesday afternoon, standing in the kitchen doorway, asking if there was more coffee in a tone that contained just barely something resembling politeness. And every one of these things Cole noticed traced back to one woman who moved through his ranch like she had always belonged in it. He didn't let himself think too hard about that. He had practiced not thinking too hard about things. It was on a Wednesday, 6 days after the telegram, that the second rider came. This one was different from the first. He didn't ask questions at the gate. He rode straight up the main road to the front of the house and dismounted before anyone could intercept him. And by the time Cole came outside, the man was already standing on the porch with his hat in his hands and an expression of professional pleasantness that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Bennett, the man said. My name is Richard Cale. I represent certain business interests operating in the Montana and Wyoming territories. I wonder if I might have a few minutes of your time. Cole looked at him. About what? A matter of some financial significance to you, Cale said. I understand Silver Creek Ranch has been carrying considerable debt. I'd like to discuss a solution to that problem. Cole opened the door, gestured inside. Cale sat across from Cole at the kitchen table. The same table where Clara sat with her recipe box, where Billy worked through his primer, where the whole texture of Silver Creek Ranch had been quietly remade over the past weeks. He set a leather satchel on the table. He opened it with the careful movements of a man who understood the weight of what he was about to place on another person's conscience. The envelope was thick. Anyone could tell from the shape of it, from the way Cale slid it across the table with 2 fingers, that what was inside it represented more money than Cole Bennett had seen in one place in a long time. $50,000, Cale said. Cole didn't touch the envelope. That's enough to retire your debt entirely, Cale said. Enough to rebuild restock and keep Silver Creek running for the next 10 years without depending on favorable weather or cattle prices. Enough to give your men steady wages and your ranch a real future. He paused. All you'd need to do is provide us with the location of a woman currently believed to be on your property. The kitchen was absolutely silent. Cole looked at the envelope. He looked at Cale's hands, soft and clean above the wrists, the way men's hands are when they've never worked with them. He thought about Silver Creek's debt, the number he woke up with every morning before his eyes were fully open. He thought about the burned fences and the low water table and the bunkhouse beds that kept emptying. He thought about Clara at that kitchen table saying, "I didn't come here to put your men in danger." He thought about a postal clerk in Cheyenne with a wife and 2 daughters. He picked up the envelope, turned it over once in his hands. Then he stood up, walked to the kitchen door, and dropped the envelope in the fire that was still burning in the stove from breakfast. Cale was on his feet instantly. "Mr. Bennett." "Get off my land," Cole said. "You don't understand what you're refusing. The man I work for is not." "I understand exactly what I'm refusing," Cole said. He turned and looked at Cale directly. "And I understand what kind of man makes offers like this, and what happens to the people foolish enough to accept them." He moved toward the door and held it open. "Leave now, or I'll have my men carry you out." Cale looked at him for a long, hard moment. Then he put his hat back on. He picked up his empty satchel. He walked out. Cole stood in the doorway and watched him ride back down the road until the sound of hoofbeats was gone. Then he closed the door. He stood in the kitchen alone. He waited for the relief to come, the feeling of having done the right thing, and it came, but it was wrapped around something else, something heavy, because $50,000 was not an abstraction on Silver Creek Ranch. It was real. It had a specific shape and a specific weight, and Cole knew exactly what it felt like in his hands, because he'd held it for about 4 seconds before he put it in the fire. He breathed in. He breathed out. He went to find Hector. Clara was in the vegetable garden when she saw Cale ride away. She had been watching from the corner of the house since she heard the horse come up the road, because 2 years of running had given her the reflexes of a woman who knew the shape of danger before it introduced itself. She went inside. She found Cole at the fence talking to Hector in a low voice. She could tell by the set of Cole's shoulders, the particular rigidity across the top of them, that something had happened that required effort to carry. She waited until Hector walked away before she approached. "He came for me," she said. Cole turned. He looked at her for a moment, measuring something. "Yes," he said. "How much did they offer?" A pause. "Enough," Cole said. Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "And you turned it down." "I burned it, actually." Clara looked at him. Something moved through her face. Not gratitude exactly, because gratitude implied a kind of surprise. And what Clara felt wasn't surprise. It was something older and more complicated than that. It was the specific emotion of a person who has expected to be abandoned so many times that when someone actually stays, they don't quite have a word for what that is. "Cole," she said carefully, "this ranch is mine to decide about," he said. "The debt has been mine to carry for 3 years," he said. "It'll keep being mine." He looked at her steadily. "I'm not interested in discussing it." Clara held his gaze. "All right," she said. "All right," he said. They stood there for a moment in the cold, 2 people who had each learned self-sufficiency as a survival strategy, standing closer to each other than either of them was entirely comfortable with, and neither of them moving away. Then Clara said quietly, "Thank you." And Cole looked at her, and the look on his face was not the face of a man accepting gratitude. It was the face of a man seeing something clearly for the first time. "Don't thank me," he said. "Just stay visible. If you disappear into your room and they don't see you on the property, they'll know I lied." He walked away. Clara watched him go. She put her hand against the fence post, held it there. The blizzard arrived without much warning on a Thursday night in mid-December, which is exactly how Montana blizzards operate, as if the weather has a policy against advance notice. By 10 o'clock, the wind was driving snow sideways, and the temperature had dropped fast enough to crack the water barrel in the yard. Cole sent the hands to the bunkhouse early and checked the barn himself, making sure the horses were fed and the latches were secure. He was back inside by 9, shaking snow off his coat, when he noticed the kitchen light still on. Clara was at the table, but she wasn't reading, and she wasn't working. She was sitting very still with her hands flat on the wood, staring at nothing in particular, and the specific quality of her stillness, not peaceful, not resting, but braced. The way a person goes still when they're holding something back. Stopped Cole in the doorway. Clara. She looked up. And for just a moment, one unguarded second before she pulled it back, he saw it. The fear. Not the rational, strategic kind of fear she carried and managed and made decisions around. The raw kind. The kind that lives beneath all the other kinds. You should sleep, she said. So should you, he said, and he walked in and sat down across from her. She didn't protest. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind threw itself against the side of the house, and the stove ticked with heat, and beyond the walls of the kitchen, the whole world had gone white and invisible. I keep thinking about Marcus, Clara said. Cole waited. The postal clerk, she said. In Cheyenne. She looked at her hands. I think about him most nights. About whether I could have found another way. Whether if I'd been smarter or faster or... You couldn't have known, Cole said. I knew what Hale was capable of, she said. I knew, and I still asked Marcus to help me. Her voice was level, but her jaw was tight. That's not something you can logic your way out of. Cole was quiet for a moment. No, he said. You can't. Clara looked at him, slightly surprised by the agreement. Most people she had found wanted to offer comfort in a way that required her to feel better about it faster than she was actually able to. My brother Daniel, Cole said. He stopped. Started again. He was 26. He'd been roping since he was 8 years old. Best I'd ever seen. He looked at the table. The rodeo that night, I knew the horse he drew was too much. I'd seen that animal before, and I told Daniel. I told him flat out that horse was dangerous and he should scratch. He didn't, Clara said. He said he knew what he was doing, Cole said. And he did know. That was the truth of it. He wasn't reckless or stupid. He was skilled and experienced, and he made his own choice. A pause. He was dead in 4 minutes. The blizzard pressed against the window. I spent a year being angry at myself for not making him scratch, Cole said. Running through every version of how it could have gone differently. What I could have said. What I could have done. He looked up at Clara. You know what I learned? What she said. That carrying guilt for someone else's death, Cole said, is the most natural thing in the world. And the most useless. He paused. Marcus made a choice. He helped you because he decided it was worth helping. That was his. You don't get to take it away from him by making his death entirely your fault. Clara was very still. He had daughters, she said barely above a whisper, as, I know, Cole said. And they'll know their father stood for something. Because of you. He held her gaze. That's not nothing. Clara looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked away toward the window, toward the white dark outside. I haven't talked to anyone about Marcus, she said. In 2 years. Not once. I know, Cole said again. How do you know? Because it's been living on your face since you got here, he said. And a weight that heavy gets heavier the longer it doesn't have any air. The kitchen was very quiet, except for the storm. Clara exhaled long and slow, the breath of someone setting down a bag they've been carrying so long, they forgot it wasn't just part of their body. Daniel, she said. Was he funny? Cole blinked. The question caught him sideways. Yeah, he said after a moment. Yeah, he was. Told the same 3 stories on rotation, and laughed at them like they were new every time. He shook his head. Drove me out of my mind. That sounds nice, Clara said. It was, Cole said. It really was. They sat there for a while longer, not awkwardly, not romantically, just with the companionable quiet of 2 people who had, without planning it, handed each other something fragile and found the other person capable of holding it. Eventually, Clara stood. I should sleep, she said. Yeah, Cole said. She carried her lamp to the kitchen doorway. She paused there. Cole, she said. He looked up. Whatever this is, Clara said carefully, whatever we're walking into, I want you to know that I don't take what you've done lightly. She met his eyes. Not the 50,000, not tonight, not any of it. Cole looked at her in the lamplight. I know you don't, he said. She nodded once. She went upstairs. Cole sat for a moment longer in the dark kitchen listening to the storm, listening to the creak of the floorboards above him as Clara moved through her small room, listening to Silver Creek Ranch breathe around him the way it had started doing again lately after 2 years of holding its breath. He thought about Daniel. He thought about the way grief worked, not the way it lifted, because it didn't lift, but the way it slowly changed shape from something that pinned you to something you could carry beside you while you moved. He thought about Clara's hands flat on the table. He thought about how when she had said thank you at the fence, something had shifted in the air between them that he couldn't have defined if someone had paid him to. He didn't let himself think about what that meant. He was getting better at that, at not letting himself think about things. Though lately, he was also getting worse at it. Outside, the blizzard intensified. The ranch sat tight against the dark. And somewhere 2 counties over, a man named Vincent Hale was reading a report from Richard Cale that said the Bennett rancher had refused the offer and burned the money. Hale read the report twice. Then he folded it neatly and set it on his desk and looked out his window for a long moment. Fine, he said to no one in particular, in the particular voice of a man who has spent 20 years getting everything he wanted and has never once accepted a refusal as a final answer. He picked up his pen. He began writing instructions of a different kind, the kind that didn't involve envelopes. By the time the blizzard broke the next morning and silver light came through the kitchen windows, and Clara had coffee on, and biscuits in the oven, and Billy Strand was at the table, sounding out a 6-letter word with his tongue stuck slightly between his teeth, none of them on Silver Creek Ranch knew what was already moving toward them. But Cole, standing at the window with his coffee watching the road, the way he'd been watching it more and more these past weeks, felt something he hadn't felt in years. A cold, specific certainty in the base of his stomach that had nothing to do with weather. It was coming. He just didn't know yet what shape it would take when it arrived. The first sign came on a Monday. Hector found the fence line on the eastern pasture cut clean through, not broken by weather or pushed by cattle, but cut with wire snips in 3 separate places, each gap wide enough for a man on horseback to ride through without slowing down. He stood looking at it for a long moment, then rode back to find Cole without stopping to fix it first, because a man who has lived in ranch country long enough knows the difference between a fence that failed and a fence that was opened on purpose. Cole looked at the cuts, crouched down, ran his thumb along the clean edge of the wire. Last night, he said. That's my read, Hector said. Ground still pressed down where the horse stood. How many riders? 2 sets of tracks coming in, 3 going out. Cole stood up. They let something out, he said. They found 17 head of cattle missing by noon. Not scattered, gone. Driven off in the night with enough organization that nobody on the property had heard a sound. Cole stood at the edge of the empty pasture and felt the specific cold fury of a man watching his livelihood walked off piece by piece, and underneath the fury, something sharper. This wasn't cattle theft. This was a message delivered in livestock. We can take whatever we want, whenever we want, and nobody is coming to stop us. He went inside. He found Clara in the kitchen. She took one look at his face. How bad, she said. 17 head, he said. Eastern fence line cut. Clara set down the bowl she was holding. "They're not going to stop with cattle," she said. "No," Cole said, "they're not." "Then we need to move faster on Denver." "I wrote to Bridges again this morning," Cole said. "Asked him what we need to bring and what route is safest. And while we wait for his answer—" Cole looked at her. "We stay ready," he said. "And we don't give them a reason to move sooner than they're planning." Clara nodded once. Then she picked up her bowl and went back to work, because that was what Clara Whitmore did. She kept her hands moving, kept the routine running, kept the kitchen warm, and the table set, and the ordinary visible to anyone watching, because ordinary was the one thing that bought time. Cole watched her for a moment. Then he went to load the rifle he kept above the kitchen door. The second sign came Wednesday. Billy Strand was coming back from the well before dawn when he saw the silhouette of a rider on the ridge above the north pasture, just sitting there, not moving, watching the ranch the way a hawk watches a field before it drops. Billy put down the water bucket and went straight to Cole's room and knocked on the door until Cole opened it. "Rider on the north ridge," Billy said. His voice was steady, which impressed Cole more than he showed. "Been there at least 10 minutes, not moving." Cole dressed in under a minute. He came out carrying the rifle. By the time they got outside, the ridge was empty. But Cole stood and looked at that ridge for a long time, because the fact that the rider had disappeared the moment someone noticed wasn't reassuring. It was the opposite. It meant they were patient. It meant they were watching for patterns, who was awake when who checked which part of the property, how many men moved at what hours. They were mapping the ranch before they hit it the way a military operation maps a position before the assault. Cole came back inside. He woke Hector. He woke Wade Coulter, who for all his bluster was steady in a crisis, and smart enough to know when to follow orders without editorializing. He sat them both down and told them what was coming. Not, maybe not, possibly, but coming, and he watched their faces and was satisfied with what he saw. Neither man flinched. "What do you need from us?" Hector said. "Split the night into 3 watches," Cole said. 2 men on at all times, rotating every 3 hours. Nobody goes anywhere alone after dark. The barn gets a lock on the inside and someone checks the horses at midnight and at 3. "And the woman," Wade said. Cole looked at him. Wade's jaw worked for a second, and then he said something nobody expected. "She stays inside after dark, and if somebody comes through that kitchen door who isn't one of us, whoever's closest makes sure they regret it." He said it with the flat conviction of a man who has updated his opinion and isn't interested in discussing the process by which he arrived at the new one. Cole looked at him for a moment. "Agreed," he said. Wade nodded. He put his hat back on. He went to start the first watch. Hector waited until he was gone, then looked at Cole with one eyebrow raised. "Don't," Cole said. "I didn't say a word," Hector said. The waiting was its own particular punishment. 2 days passed with nothing happening, which was worse in some ways than something happening because the absence of action didn't mean the absence of threat. It meant the threat was choosing its moment. Clara moved through both days with the deliberate calm of someone who has been afraid before and has learned to function inside the fear rather than waiting for it to stop. She cooked. She taught. She tended her turned soil in the garden, though she stayed close to the house and never had her back to the road. On Thursday evening after supper, Cole found her at the garden fence in the failing light, her coat pulled tight, her eyes on the far tree line. "You should come in," he said. "In a minute," she said. He stood beside her. Neither of them spoke for a while. "Do you ever think about what you'd do?" Clara said. "After, when it's over." "After what? After Denver? After the trial? After all of it?" She looked at him sideways. "What do you want, Cole, for yourself? Not the ranch, not the debt, you." The question caught him the same way her question about Daniel had caught him in the blizzard sideways and without warning in a place he'd left unguarded. "I don't think about after much," he said. Why not? He thought about it honestly. "Because the last time I planned ahead," he said, "my brother died and the plan went with him. Clara was quiet for a moment. "That's not a reason to stop planning," she said. "That's just grief talking like it's logic." Cole looked at her. "You're very direct," he said. "You noticed," she said. And there was something in it, the faintest edge of dry humor, that was different from her usual careful restraint. Something that had only very recently started surfacing, the way an underground spring surfaces after enough consistent pressure. "I noticed in the first 10 minutes, Cole said. "Is that a complaint?" "No," he said. "Not even close." They stood together at the garden fence while the sky went dark above Silver Creek, and for those few minutes, the ranch was just a ranch, and two people standing in the last of the evening light, and it was almost possible to forget what was gathering in the dark outside the property line. Almost. The attack came on Friday night. It came at 2 in the morning, which is the hour chosen by people who do this kind of work, because 2 in the morning is the deepest point of the night, the hour when the body's natural rhythms hit their lowest, when alertness requires the most effort, when the instinct to believe everything is fine is strongest. Hector was on watch at the north gate. Wade was at the east fence. Cole was in the house, not sleeping. He hadn't slept properly in 4 days, sitting at the kitchen table, with the rifle across his knees, listening to the ranch, the way you listen to a body for the sound of wrong breathing. He smelled it before he heard it. Smoke. Not wood smoke. Not chimney smoke. The particular heavy smell of hay and timber catching together, a smell every rancher in Montana knows in the part of their brain that never fully sleeps. He was on his feet and through the door in 3 seconds. The barn was already burning. Cole ran. He hit the barn door and had it open before his mind had finished processing what he was seeing. The fire had started at the far end in the hay storage, and it was moving fast, the way fire moves through dry winter hay, with a speed that feels almost personally aggressive. He got 3 horses out before the smoke drove him back, and he would have gone back in again, except that gunfire opened up from the east tree line. Not one shot, not a warning. A sustained, coordinated volley that swept across the front of the ranch yard and sent Cole flat against the ground, and told him with absolute clarity that this was not a raid, not a robbery, not a scare tactic. This was an attempt to end it. "Cole?" Hector's voice came from the direction of the north gate, tight and controlled. "We've got riders. 4, maybe 5, coming up the west road." Cole rolled to the fence post. "Hold the gate!" he shouted back. "Don't let them reach the house!" He got up in a low run and made it to the bunkhouse, where the remaining hands were already coming out armed and awake, because men who work cattle in Montana sleep with one ear open as a matter of professional habit. "East and west," Cole ordered. "Hector's at the north gate, support him. Don't bunch up and don't let them flank the house." The hands split without argument. They had worked with Cole Bennett long enough to know that when his voice went to that particular flat register, you moved first and asked questions later. Cole turned back toward the house. Billy Strand was not in the bunkhouse. The realization hit Cole 2 seconds after he'd already started running toward the front porch, because Billy slept light, and Billy always went to the kitchen first when something woke him, because the kitchen was where Clara was, and Billy Strand had appointed himself Clara's nearest thing to a little brother without ever putting the decision into words. Cole hit the porch steps at a run. The front door was open. Inside, Clara was not in the kitchen. She was at the base of the stairs, and she had her arm around Billy, who was on the floor with his back against the wall and his left shoulder dark with blood. He'd been hit, caught by a shot coming through the front window, when he'd looked out to see what was happening, the way a 16-year-old with more bravery than self-preservation instinct will absolutely do in a crisis. Clara had her hand pressed hard against his shoulder. She was talking to him in a low, steady voice. Not panicked, not desperate, fully focused, her voice like a rope thrown to a drowning person. "Breathe," she was saying. "Look at me, Billy. Right here. You're going to be fine. Stay with me." Cole crossed the room in 4 steps. He took one look at Billy's shoulder, the position of the wound, the amount of blood, and felt something release in his chest that had been locked tight. "Through and through," he said. "It didn't stay in." "I know," Clara said, not looking up. I need something to pack it with. Clean cloth as much as you have. Cole was already moving. He came back with an armful of kitchen linen, and Clara took it without breaking her rhythm. Pressure, reassurance. Instruction, pressure again, working with the efficiency of someone who has dealt with injury before and hasn't lost the capacity to think clearly inside it. Am I dying? Billy said. He said it very calmly, which was somehow the most alarming thing about it. No, Clara said firmly. You are not dying. You're going to have a scar that you're going to tell terrible stories about for the next 60 years. Billy made a sound that was half laugh, half hiss of pain. You're going to be okay, Clara said. I promise. Outside gunfire continued in sharp, irregular bursts. The barn burned. Cole could hear Hector's voice, and Wade's voice, and the sounds of men moving in organized patterns across his property, his land, his ranch, the place his father had built, and Daniel had loved, and Cole had held together by nothing but stubbornness for 2 years. He stood up. He picked up the rifle. He looked at Clara kneeling on the floor of his kitchen with both hands pressed to Billy Strand's shoulder, her face completely composed, her voice completely steady, anchoring a frightened boy to the present tense, through nothing but sheer force of attention. Cole had come outside tonight ready to fight for Silver Creek Ranch, for the cattle, for the debt he could finally clear, for the buildings his father built with his own hands. He stood in his kitchen doorway and watched Clara Whitmore keep a 16-year-old boy alive by the force of her presence alone, and understood with a sudden clarity that came from somewhere beneath reason that the ranch was not what he was fighting for. It hadn't been the ranch for a while now. He just hadn't let himself know it until this moment. Cole? Clara's voice stopped him. He turned. Come back, she said. Not a command, not a plea. A statement of fact, the most essential kind, the way she said most things that mattered. He held her gaze for 1 second. Then he went out into the dark. The fight lasted 40 minutes. Cole moved across his own property in the dark, the way a man moves through a place he has known his entire life without hesitation, without needing to see his body following the memory of every fence post and water trough and corner of building. He found Hector holding the north gate against 2 riders who had dismounted and were trying to push through on foot. Cole took one and Hector took the other, and neither of them required much persuading to retreat. On the east side, Wade Coulter had positioned himself behind the water tank with a patience that was remarkable for a man of his temperament, and had systematically discouraged 3 separate attempts to advance on the house with a degree of accuracy that Cole made a mental note to respect considerably more going forward. The riders from the West Road never made it past the fence. 2 of Cole's best hands had held that line with the grim efficiency of men who understood exactly what was at stake and exactly how much of it they were not willing to give up. By 3 in the morning, the shooting had stopped. By 3:15, the remaining attackers had gone. The barn was gone. The structure Cole's father had spent 2 summers building, the one that had stood for 31 years through every Montana winter. Silver Creek had thrown at it, had burned to the ground in under 2 hours. Cole stood and looked at where it had been for a long moment, and the loss of it went through him like a physical thing, not just grief for the building, but for everything the building held. His father's handprints in the timber. Daniel's initials carved into the post by the second stall when he was 11 years old. 20 years of hay seasons and foaling seasons, and the particular smell of a place that has been worked in and cared for so long, it takes on a character of its own. All of it gone. Cole stood in the cold and looked at the remains and let himself feel it, the loss, the anger, the particular exhaustion of a man who has fought and keeps having to fight, and then he turned around and walked back to the house. Clara was still on the kitchen floor when he came in. Billy was propped against the wall with his shoulder bandaged and his head drooping with the boneless heaviness of someone who has spent all their adrenaline. He was alive. His color was reasonable. Clara had packed the wound with efficiency that would have done a field medic credit, and she was sitting close enough to Billy that her shoulder touched his, keeping him warm and anchored without making a production of it. She looked up when Cole came in. She looked at his face, read it the way she always read faces faster than words. "The barn," she said. Yes, he said. Her jaw tightened. She looked down for a moment. Cole, she said. Don't, he said. I need to say, Clara. His voice was tired, not angry, just very, very tired. I know what you're going to say, and I don't want to hear it. She looked at him. We leave for Denver in 3 days, he said. Bridges confirmed the route this morning before any of this started. I'm going to take you and the evidence to federal investigators, and we are going to end this. That's what's happening next. He looked at her steadily. Can we agree on that? Clara held his gaze for a long moment. Yes, she said. Good. He crossed the kitchen and crouched down next to Billy. How do you feel? Billy opened one eye. Like I got shot, he said. Accurate, Cole said. Can you stand? Probably. Then let's get you to a real bed. He helped Billy up. Clara took the other side. They walked him to the bunkhouse together, and the whole way Billy kept his eyes open and his feet moving with the specific determination of a young person who refuses to be carried if they can possibly walk. When they'd gotten him settled, and Hector had taken up watch, and Cole and Clara were standing outside the bunkhouse door in the cold, Clara said quietly, He was trying to protect me. When he got hit, he was trying to get to me. I know, Cole said. He's 16. I know. Clara was quiet for the moment. Then she said with a fierceness that was all the more striking for how controlled her voice stayed. I want Vincent Hale in a federal courtroom. I want him to stand up in front of people and have every single thing he did said out loud in public with his name attached to it. Cole looked at her. Then that's what we're going to make happen, he said. She nodded once, hard and certain. Above the ranch, the sky had begun to lighten, almost imperceptibly at its eastern edge, that first gray promise of morning that arrives before the color does. Silver Creek sat in it, battered and smoke-smelling, one major structure, reduced to ash and embers. But standing. Still standing. Cole looked at the gray sky. He looked at his ranch. He breathed in the cold air that smelled of smoke and snow, and the particular mineral smell of Montana winter. He made a decision, not the kind made in a dramatic moment, not the kind requiring announcement, the quiet kind, the kind a man makes when he understands without ceremony what he is actually willing to lose and what he is not. The ranch could burn. He was not losing her. They left before sunrise 2 days ahead of Cole's original plan. The decision came at midnight when Hector came to the house with word that a rider had been spotted on the south road the same direction as the Harlow County Sheriff's Office, moving slow and watching the property with the deliberate patience of someone paid to report what they saw rather than act on it themselves. Cole listened. He didn't waste time on debate. We go tomorrow, he told Clara. 3 o'clock in the morning, before anyone watching this road expects movement. Clara was already at the table with the tin recipe box open. She was transferring the folded documents, the copied ledger pages, the names, the account numbers, the transaction records she had memorized and written in her own hand in the margins, into an oilskin packet she had prepared days ago against exactly this possibility. Her hands were steady and quick and entirely without hesitation. The South Road or the East Pass, she said. East Pass to Grover, then the main line from Grover to Denver, Cole said. Longer, but the South Road is watched. The East Pass is hard going in winter, but nobody expects it. How long? 3 days, maybe 4 if the pass is drifted. Clara nodded. She folded the oilskin packet and tucked it into the inside of her coat and buttoned every button from the bottom up, methodical and certain. And Cole watched her do it and understood that this woman had spent 2 years learning to carry the most important thing she owned, somewhere no one could reach it without going through her first. I'll be ready at 3, she said. Cole went to find Hector. He left Silver Creek that night in Hector's hands, and there was nobody in the world he would have trusted with it more because Hector Reyes had kept this ranch breathing during every crisis. Cole had been too deep in grief to manage properly, and he had done it without being asked and without expecting recognition. Cole shook his hand at the bunkhouse door in the dark, and didn't say much because the two of them had long since moved past the kind of relationship that required saying much. Bring her back safe. Hector said. Cole held his gaze for a moment. Plan to, he said. He went to check on Billy before he left. The boy was awake. He'd been sleeping in broken intervals since the shooting, the shoulder wound pulling him in and out of consciousness at irregular hours. He looked up when Cole came in, and his face had the particular clarity that sometimes follows pain, when everything unnecessary has been stripped away, and what's left is very simple and very true. You're going now, Billy said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, Cole said. With Miss Clara. Yeah. Billy was quiet for a moment. Then he said, She's gonna be okay right after Denver. She can come back. Cole looked at him. At this 16-year-old boy who had taken a bullet coming to help a woman he'd known for 6 weeks because it was the right thing to do and hadn't once acted like it required any particular bravery. She can come back, Cole said. Billy nodded satisfied. He closed his eyes. Cole stood there for a moment longer. Then he put his hat on and went to get the horses. The East Pass in December was exactly as brutal as Cole had promised. Narrow and steep and wound with wind that came off the mountains with a personal hostility that Montana weather reserves for people who travel it out of season. They rode hard the first day and covered more ground than Cole had estimated, partly because the horses were good and partly because Clara rode, like someone who had spent real time in a saddle, which surprised him. You said you were a bookkeeper, he said the first afternoon when she took a difficult switchback corner without slowing. I was, she said. Before that, I grew up on a horse farm in Ohio. She glanced at him sideways. Did you think I walked everywhere? Cole almost smiled. They camped that night in a hollow off the main trail, and Clara made coffee over a small fire, and they sat on opposite sides of it and talked in low voices, the way people talk when they're genuinely alone for the first time, and the ordinary social distances have been stripped away by circumstance. They talked about Ohio and about Montana. About what bookkeeping actually looked like from the inside, the particular tedium of it, the way numbers told stories that the people who made them often thought were invisible. About what Cole's father had been like, and what Daniel had been like, and what Silver Creek had felt like before grief moved in and rearranged the furniture. At one point, Clara said, What was the thing you loved most about it, the ranch? Before. Cole thought about it for a real moment. Sunup, he said. Before anyone else was moving. The ranch was just mine for about an hour. Quiet in a way it isn't any other time. He paused. Daniel used to joke that I was more in love with my land than I'd ever be with a person. A silence. Was he right? Clara said. Cole looked at the fire. He was, he said. For a long time he was. Clara looked at him across the fire. The way she looked at him direct without the careful management she applied to most things said something she hadn't put into words yet. And Cole, who had spent his whole adult life cataloging what was solid and what needed tending, looked back and understood that something was shifting between them that had been shifting for weeks, moving the way geology moves, too slow to see in any given moment, but unmistakable when you measured the distance traveled. He looked away first. Clara refilled her coffee cup and said nothing else about it because she understood timing the way she understood recipes, the difference between a thing being ready and a thing being forced. They reached Grover on the second evening, road worn and cold. Cole sent a telegraph to Earl Bridges in Denver from the Grover station. 3 words, coming. East route. Bridges had given him a phrase to use that would tell him whether the federal contact was still in place and still safe. The reply came within the hour, also 3 words, room is ready. It's clear, Cole told Clara. Bridges has the investigators waiting. Clara exhaled. It was the first time since leaving Silver Creek that he heard something in her breath that wasn't pure controlled steadiness. How long since you've been somewhere genuinely safe? Cole said. He said it quietly without making it into anything larger than a question. Clara thought about it. 2 years, she said. Give or take. Cole said nothing. He folded the telegraph paper. He put it in his coat. What he didn't say because there was no appropriate context for it yet. No frame that wouldn't make it something it wasn't ready to be. was that the idea of her being unsafe for 2 years alone and running and carrying a dead man's memory and a packet of evidence stitched into her coat made something in his chest tighten with an anger that had nothing to do with Vincent Hale. An anger at time itself. At the 2 years that had passed before she walked up his road in the snow. He let the thought go. He wasn't ready for it yet either. Denver was a different world from Silver Creek, in every way that a city is different from open country. Louder, faster, more crowded with people who moved like they had somewhere to be, and didn't particularly care who was in their way. Cole navigated it with the stiff patience of a ranchman in an unfamiliar environment, and Clara moved through it with the practiced invisibility of someone who had spent 2 years being very careful not to be noticed in public spaces. Earl Bridges met them at the arranged location, a private room above a surveying office, chosen because surveyors were the one kind of professional who could receive a continuous stream of strangers without attracting comment. He was a compact man in his 50s, with a permanent squint and the unhurried manner of someone who had seen enough to stop being surprised by most things. He shook Cole's hand. He looked at Clara. "Miss Whitmore," he said. "I was beginning to wonder if we'd ever get to this point." "So was I," Clara said. "Frequently." She reached into her coat and produced the oilskin packet. She set it on the table between them with the same flat, direct certainty she brought to every significant action. No drama, no ceremony. Just the clean movement of a person who has been waiting to do something for a very long time and is finally doing it. Bridges opened it. He read for several minutes without speaking. Then he looked up. "This is enough," he said. "If these accounts are accurate—" "They're accurate," Clara said. "If they're accurate, this names 4 federal bank officials, 2 sitting senators, and at least 6 railroad company officers across 3 territories." He set the papers down. "This is larger than we thought." "I know what it is," Clara said. "I spent 18 months recording it." Bridges looked at her for a moment with the particular expression of a man reassessing his prior assumptions. "We'll need you to give a full statement," he said. "Everything you witnessed directly, everything you copied and when. Chain of custody for every document." "I know," Clara said. "I'm ready." "It could take weeks. There may be a trial." "I know that too. Hale will try to discredit you. His lawyers will go after your employment history, your character, your reasons for—" "Mr. Bridges," Clara said quietly, but with a precision that stopped him mid-sentence. "I have been running from this man for 2 years. I watched a man die because he helped me. I rode 4 days through a Montana winter to sit in this room." She held his gaze. "I am not afraid of his lawyers." Bridges was quiet for a moment. "No," he said. "I don't imagine you are." He picked up the papers again. He began making notes. Cole sat in the corner of the room and watched Clara give her statement for the next 3 hours, and it was the most sustained act of courage he had ever witnessed from a seated position. She was methodical and precise, and entirely unflinching. Dates, names, amounts, locations. The exact wording of conversations, she had overheard the specific sequence of entries in the ledgers, and what they concealed the chain of events that had led from a bookkeeper's desk in a railroad office to a postal clerk in a river in Cheyenne. She told it straight through without once softening it, or making herself more sympathetic, or Marcus Cole's death more tragic than it already was, because the facts were sufficient. And Clara Whitmore had always understood that the truth doesn't require decoration. When she finished, Bridges sat back. "We'll have an arrest warrant within the week," he said. "Possibly sooner." "The Montana operation," Cole said. "The attack on my ranch. The sheriff in Harlow County." "All of it will be part of the investigation," Bridges said. "The county sheriff is already being looked at separately. We had a flag on him before you ever sent me that first letter." He looked at Cole. "Your property damage will be documented. There will likely be federal restitution." Cole nodded once. That wasn't the part he was thinking about. "Clara," Bridges said, "is there somewhere safe you can stay in Denver while we process this? We'd prefer you not travel back to Montana until after the warrant is executed. Hale doesn't know what's been handed over yet, but when he finds out, she stays with me, Cole said. Both Clara and Bridges looked at him. Cole looked at Clara. If that's agreeable to you, he said in a tone that made it clear he had an opinion about it, but was capable of restraint. Clara held his gaze for a moment. That's agreeable, she said. They stayed in Denver for 9 days. The warrant for Vincent Hale's arrest was executed on the 6th day. Cole heard about it from Bridges over a terse morning telegram that read, "Target secured. Network in motion. You are clear to return." He brought it to Clara without preamble and watched her read it, watched the specific quality of her stillness in that moment. Not relief, not triumph, something older and less clean than either of those. The particular feeling of a chapter ending that cost too much to celebrate simply. She held the telegram for a long time. "Marcus," she said softly. Not to Cole, just to the air, to whoever might be listening on the other side of 2 years of carrying. Cole didn't say anything. He simply sat down across from her and stayed there, which was the most useful thing he could think to do. After a while, Clara folded the telegram. She set it on the table. She looked at Cole with eyes that were very bright but dry. "Let's go home," she said. The word home moved through Cole like something physical. He picked up his hat. "Let's go," he said. The ride back to Silver Creek was different from the ride to Denver in ways that were hard to name precisely, but impossible to miss. The urgency was gone, not the alertness, not the care, but the particular pressure of running toward something before it closed. The horses moved at an easier pace. Conversation came in longer stretches, with more room in it for silence that wasn't tense. Clara laughed twice, once at something Cole said about the East Pass, once at herself for mispronouncing the name of a creek they crossed. Both times the laugh surprised her slightly, the way a sound does when a room has been quiet so long the acoustics have changed. Cole kept that laugh in his chest, like a coal. They came over the last ridge above Silver Creek on a late afternoon 4 days after leaving Denver, and Cole pulled his horse up at the top without meaning to. Below them, the ranch sat in the flat amber light of a winter afternoon smoke from the kitchen chimney horses moving in the north pasture. The skeleton outline of the new barn frame, already up where the old one had stood, a geometric precision of fresh timber rising from the ash. He hadn't known the hands had started rebuilding. He hadn't asked them to. He sat and looked at it for a long moment, and the thing that moved through him was something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Not pride exactly, and not peace exactly, but something made of both of those things, and something else underneath them that he didn't have a clean word for. "They didn't wait," Clara said. "No," Cole said, "they didn't." "That's what happens," Clara said quietly, "when a place feels worth saving." Cole looked at her. She was looking at the ranch below with an expression he recognized because he'd seen it on his own face years ago before grief rearranged everything. The specific expression of a person seeing somewhere they belong. They rode down. Hector met them at the gate with the particular dignity of a man who has been holding a ranch together through a crisis and knows it and isn't going to say so. "Everything intact," Cole said. "More or less," Hector said. "Billy's up and moving. Wade got the frame on the new barn he's been driving. Everyone's slightly crazy about the crossbeams, but it'll be solid when it's done." He paused. "Welcome back." He said it to both of them, equally. Clara touched his arm as she passed, and Hector, this man who had worked 11 years on Silver Creek, without visible sentiment, cleared his throat and found something to look at in the middle distance. Cole did not say a word about it. That evening after supper, the first real supper Clara had cooked in 10 days, which the hands received with a reverence that would have been comic if it weren't so sincere. Cole came outside and stood at the fence looking west while the last of the light went out of the sky. He heard her footsteps. Knew them by now, the particular rhythm of her walk, the slight hesitation she made on the second porch step because it creaked. He didn't turn around. She stood beside him. Not close enough to require explanation. Close enough to be there. "You're thinking about the barn," she said. "No," he said. A pause. What then? Cole was quiet for a moment. The honest answer was complicated by the fact that he hadn't said it to himself yet. Not in complete words, and saying incomplete things out loud had always seemed to him a form of carelessness. But he was very tired of carrying things silently. He had watched her carry something silently for 2 years, and it had cost her 2 years. He was beginning to update his position on the strategy. "I stopped believing people stayed," he said. He said it to the horizon, not looking at her, just putting the words into the air between them where they could exist without requiring an immediate response. After Daniel, after the hands started leaving, I stopped waiting for it staying because it felt like something that happened to other people, luckier ones. He heard Clara very still beside him. "And then you hired a cook," she said. "And then I hired a cook," he said, "who walked up my road in a snowstorm carrying a tin box and looked at me like I didn't scare her one bit." "You didn't," Clara said. "I know," he said. That was part of it. A long quiet between them. The sky was deep blue now, the first stars appearing. "Cole," Clara said. "Yeah." She turned to face him. He felt her move and turned too, and they were closer than he'd registered, or maybe the dark had collapsed the distance between them. It didn't matter which. Her hand came up, slowly, with full deliberate intention, the way Clara Whitmore did everything that mattered, not hesitant, not impulsive, but certain. She placed her palm against the side of his face, and Cole went completely still. The way a man goes still when something he has been braced against, not having, suddenly arrives, and he hasn't got the defensive architecture ready because he genuinely didn't believe it was coming. And Clara kissed him. Not sudden, not staged. Just warm, genuinely warm, the kind of warmth that comes from a person who has been cold for a long time and knows exactly what they're moving toward. Certain, unhurried, real. Cole stood for exactly 1 second in the surprise of it. Then he kissed her back. And what came apart in him in that moment was not dramatic. There was no sound to it, no visible collapse, nothing that anyone watching would have been able to point to. Just the slow internal giving way of something that had been locked for 2 years. Something that had told him every day since Daniel died that caring about people was the fastest way to lose them, and therefore the thing to be avoided at all costs. It came apart, and underneath it was everything he'd been keeping at bay. Not grief, not this time, but the opposite of grief. The alive feeling. The feeling of a man standing in the present tense with both feet, instead of keeping one foot always in the past, braced against another loss. When they separated, neither of them spoke for a moment. The stars were out fully now. The kitchen light burned warm in the house behind them. Somewhere in the bunkhouse, someone was laughing, Hector probably at something Wade had said. "I've been wanting to do that," Clara said, "for longer than I'm going to admit out loud." Something moved in Cole's face that was unmistakably, undeniably a smile. "How long?" he said. "The night of the blizzard," she said. "When you said carrying guilt for someone else's death was the most natural thing in the world and the most useless." She looked at him steadily. "Nobody had ever said anything like that to me before. Nobody had ever just said the true thing without making it about themselves." "I'm not good at much," Cole said, "but I'm reasonably good at the true thing." "I noticed," Clara said. "In the first 10 minutes. Cole looked at her, really looked at her the way he'd been careful not to let himself do too directly for the past 6 weeks, because looking at someone that directly requires a willingness to be seen looking, and he hadn't been ready for that. He was ready now. "You can stay," he said, "if you want to, at Silver Creek, after all of this." He paused. I'm not making you a condition of anything. The job is yours regardless. The room is yours regardless." "Cole," Clara said, "I just want you to know you don't have to keep running," he said. "Not from here. Not from me." Clara looked at him for a long, still moment. "I know," she said. And the way she said it, simply without qualification, was the clearest thing he had ever heard. The kitchen door opened behind them, and Billy Strand appeared on the porch, his arm in a sling, his hair sticking up in approximately 4 directions. "Miss Clara," he said, "Hector says are there any biscuits left from supper because Wade ate most of them, and there's going to be a situation." Clara turned. "There are biscuits," she said, "on the shelf under the cloth." "Thank you," Billy said with enormous sincerity, and disappeared back inside. Cole stood in the dark and looked at his ranch, the new timber frame of the barn against the night sky, the kitchen light burning, the sound of his men inside laughing about biscuits, and felt something he had spent 2 years convinced was gone permanently. He felt like he was home. Not the home that had existed before Daniel died. Not the ranch as it had been, but the ranch as it was becoming rebuilt, still standing warm with the presence of people who had chosen to stay. And beside him, with her shoulder resting against his arm and her face tipped up toward the Montana stars, the woman who had walked up his road in the snow and reminded a dead place that it still knew how to breathe. Neither of them went inside for a long time. The telegram from Earl Bridges arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, 3 months after Denver, and it came while Clara was teaching Billy how to balance the ranch's weekly supply ledger at the kitchen table. Billy had graduated from the spelling primer in January. He had moved through basic arithmetic in February with a speed that surprised everyone except Clara, who had recognized from the beginning that Billy Strand had the kind of mind that moved fast and quiet, like water finding the lowest and most efficient path. By March, he was sitting with the actual ranch accounts, and Clara was explaining the difference between an operating expense and a capital investment, with the same patience she brought to everything, and Billy was nodding with his tongue between his teeth and his pencil moving. Cole came in from the yard with the telegram in his hand. Clara looked up. She read his face. "Bridges," she said. "Yes," Cole said. He handed it to her. Clara took it. She read it once standing up from the table, her free hand flat against the wood. Then she sat back down slowly, the way a person sits when their legs have made a decision slightly ahead of their conscious mind. The telegram said 6 words that mattered and several that didn't. The 6 that mattered were Hale arrested this morning. Full indictment. Billy looked between the two of them. "Is that the man who—" "Yes," Clara said. "Is he going to prison?" Clara set the telegram on the table. She pressed her palm flat over it, the way you press a hand over a wound when the bleeding finally slows. "Yes," she said. "He is." Billy looked at the telegram. Then he looked at Clara with the directness of someone who has not yet learned to soften the things he notices. "You're not celebrating," he said. Clara was quiet for a moment. "No," she said. "I'm not." "Why not?" Clara looked at him, this boy who had taken a bullet at 16 and learned to read at 16, and was now learning accounting at 16, and asked questions with the uncomplicated precision of someone who genuinely wanted to understand. "Because celebrating would mean it's over," she said. "And it's not over for Marcus. It won't ever be over for his daughters." She paused. "But it means something. It means he didn't get to keep doing it. And that matters." Billy thought about this seriously, the way he thought about everything. "Miss Clara," he said, "do you think he knew Marcus? Do you think he knew it would turn out this way when he helped you?" Clara looked at the telegram. "No," she said. "He just knew it was the right thing to do." Billy nodded, picked up his pencil, went back to the ledger. Cole stood in the kitchen doorway and watched the two of them, the woman who had carried a dead man's memory for 2 years and had just watched it finally mean something, and the boy who had asked the exact right question and then, in the particular wisdom of the young, had simply gone back to work and felt the specific weight of this moment. Not triumph, not resolution, something more honest than both of those. The feeling of a thing having cost exactly what it cost and being worth it anyway. He poured 2 cups of coffee. He set one in front of Clara without being asked. She picked it up. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. Word traveled fast in Harlow County. By the end of the week, the shape of what had happened, the federal investigation, The indictments, the arrest of a man whose money had been reaching into Montana politics for years, had spread through the county with the particular velocity of news that confirms what people had half suspected and didn't have the evidence to say out loud. The Harlow County Sheriff was removed from his position pending investigation. A federal marshal came through and spent 2 days at the courthouse with boxes of records and an expression of professional neutrality that communicated very clearly that things were about to change considerably. Cole rode into town on a Thursday, and people looked at him differently. Not with pity, he'd had enough of that in the years after Daniel. Not with deference, he'd never wanted that either. With the particular respect that a community extends to a person who did something hard when the easier thing was right there on the table, and who did it quietly, without making a speech about it. The bank manager, Thomas Pruitt, stopped Cole on the main street. "Bennett," he said. He had the look of a man who has been rearranging his conscience for several days and has arrived at an uncomfortable destination. "I've been meaning to speak with you." "I imagine you have," Cole said. Pruitt cleared his throat. "The terms on your ranch loan," he said. "The interest rate applied, the additional penalties assessed over the past 2 years. There are indications that those figures were manipulated at the direction of certain parties who are now under federal investigation." Cole waited. "What I'm saying," Pruitt said with the pained precision of a man who has written and rewritten this sentence several times, "is that what Silver Creek Ranch actually owes when the corrupted figures are removed is considerably less than the amount on record. The federal investigator has flagged it. There will be an adjustment." Cole looked at him for a long moment. "How considerable?" he said. Pruitt told him. Cole stood on the main street of Harlow in the March cold and felt something release in his chest that had been locked there for 3 years. A pressure so constant he had stopped recognizing it as something separate from the ordinary weight of breathing. He rode home. He found Clara in this kitchen garden, the one she had turned in frozen December ground, because she said even dead ground wanted another chance. The first green things were up, barely, thin and tentative, and extraordinarily alive. He told her about Pruitt, about the adjusted figures, about what it meant for Silver Creek going forward. Clara listened with her hands still in the soil. When he finished, she sat back on her heels and looked at the green shoots coming up through the cold earth. "Your father built this ranch," she said. "Yes," Cole said. "And Daniel grew up on it." "Yes." "And you held it for 3 years against everything," she said. "Alone." She looked up at him. It was always going to survive. It just needed someone to hold it long enough. Cole crouched down beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "You helped?" he said. "I made stew," she said. "Clara." She looked at him sideways. There was something in her face, the faintest version of that smile she kept mostly in reserve, the one that appeared when something landed somewhere real. "You did considerably more than that," Cole said. "I turned some dirt," she said. "You turned everything," Cole said. She held his gaze for a moment. Then she looked back at the green shoots. "The peas will be up by May," she said. Cole looked at them. "What else?" "Carrots, some beans. I thought we might try tomatoes on the south side if the summer runs warm enough." "We?" Cole said. Clara stopped. He hadn't planned to say it that way. It had just come out of him the way true things came out without clearing the appropriate channels first. "We," he said again, deliberately this time, looking at her directly. "That's still the plan, isn't it? You're staying." Clara looked at him with eyes that were very still. "I'm staying," she said. "Cole, I told you." "I know what you told me," he said. I want to make sure we're saying the same thing, the same version of staying." A pause. Clara tilted her head slightly. "What version are you saying?" she said. "The permanent one," he said. The garden was very quiet. Down at the barn, the new barn, the one Wade Coulter had driven everyone slightly crazy building, the one that smelled of fresh timber, and the particular hope of things put back together, someone was hammering the sound, carrying clean and rhythmic in the cold air. Clara looked at Cole for a long moment. "Ask me properly," she said. Cole almost laughed. Almost. The muscle was getting more practice lately. "Later?" he said. "I'm going to do it properly, later. I just needed to know the answer wasn't going to embarrass me." "It's not going to embarrass you," Clara said. "Good," he said. He stood up. He went to the barn. Clara sat in the garden for a moment longer, her hands in the soil, the green things coming up around her. She was smiling. The new barn was finished on the first Saturday of April, which arrived with the particular extravagance that Montana springs occasionally produce, wide and blue, and so aggressively warm after a long winter, that everyone on the ranch seemed to be moving slightly faster than usual, as if the sun were genuinely accelerating them. The whole crew worked the last day together. Cole and Hector and Wade and the Hands and Billy, who had been cleared for light work by the traveling doctor and had interpreted light work as broadly as possible. Clara cooked for all of them and brought food out at midday, and they ate together in the new barn that smelled of pine and possibility, sitting on sawhorses and upturned buckets, talking and arguing about the crossbeams and whether Wade's measurements on the east wall were as precise as Wade claimed they were. Wade claimed they were perfectly precise. Hector claimed they were close enough. Wade said close enough was not precise. Clara said the barn was beautiful, and she meant it, and Wade looked so unexpectedly pleased by this that he stopped arguing for approximately 4 minutes. By late afternoon, the last board was in place. The men stood back and looked at what they had built together without being asked. Without a foreman directing the work, and the feeling in that space was the specific feeling of people who have rebuilt something after a loss and understand without saying so that what they've built is not quite the same as what was burned. It's different, it's new, and it's theirs in a way that things only become when they've had to be fought for. Cole looked at his men. He looked at the barn. He looked at Clara standing at the edge of the group with her arms crossed against the afternoon chill, watching his face the way she had watched it from the very beginning, directly without flinching, seeing exactly what was there. He cleared his throat. "Good work," he said. High praise from Cole Bennett, and everyone knew it. Hector grinned. Billy made a fist. Even Wade managed an expression in the vicinity of satisfaction. "There's supper in the house," Clara said. "Wash up before you come in." They went. Cole and Clara were the last two left in the barn. He looked at her. She looked at him. "Later," she said, answering the question he hadn't asked yet. "Now," he said. He took her hand the first time he had done it deliberately in daylight, without emergency, as a justification, and walked her out of the barn and up the hill behind the house. The hill that overlooked all of Silver Creek, where you could see every fence line and every pasture, and the creek itself, catching the late afternoon light, and the house with smoke coming from the kitchen chimney, and the new barn standing exactly where the old one had stood. He stopped at the top. He turned to face her. He had thought, in the abstract way he thought about things he wasn't ready for yet, that he would have something prepared. Some arrangement of words that was worthy of the moment. He had rehearsed nothing. He stood on the hill where he had stood 1,000 times over 30 years, and looked at this woman who had walked up his road in the snow and refused to be afraid of him, and taught a boy to read, and burned evidence of injustice into her coat lining, and held a wounded teenager on his kitchen floor through a firefight, and kissed him with the certainty of someone who had thought about it considerably longer than she was willing to admit. And what came out was exactly what was true. "I don't want this place without you in it," he said. No speech, no flourish. Just those 9 words delivered in the direct, undecorated way he delivered everything that mattered. Clara looked at him. Something happened in her face. Not a collapse. Not the theatrical crumbling of a person in a story. Something quieter and more real than that. A giving way in the muscles around her eyes that happened when a person stops bracing for the thing that isn't coming and finally understands that it isn't coming because something entirely different arrived instead. Her eyes filled. She didn't apologize for it. She didn't look away. "You're going to have to say the rest of it," she said, and her voice was steady, even now, even with her eyes bright and full. Because that was Clara Whitmore. Steady even in the moment of being unmade. Will you stay? Cole said. Not as the cook. Not with a job title or a room above the kitchen. With me, at Silver Creek, permanently. He held her gaze. Because I meant what I said in the garden. Permanent is the version I'm saying. Clara looked at him for a long, still moment. Down below them, the ranch breathed in the late light. The horses moved in the pasture. The kitchen chimney sent its thin line of smoke into the April sky. Billy's voice carried up from the yard. He was telling Hector something, with his characteristic intensity hands moving, making his point. I've been home twice in my life, Clara said. Once when I was a child in Ohio. Once. She stopped, looked at him. Once since December. Cole understood what she was saying. Yes, she said. Just that. One word. Clean and final and absolute. Cole reached into his coat pocket. He produced a ring, small, plain silver, the kind of ring that doesn't make claims about itself. His mother's ring, which had sat in a box in his bureau for 2 years, because he hadn't known what to do with it after she passed, and had never imagined finding a reason to do anything with it at all. Clara looked at it in his hand. It's not fancy, he said. I don't want fancy, she said. I never wanted fancy. He took her hand. He put it on her finger. It fit. Clara looked at it for a moment. Then she looked up at him, and what was in her face now was not the careful, managed composure of a woman who had learned to keep herself from needing too much. It was something open, something that had put down every defensive thing it had been carrying for 2 years and was standing without armor in the afternoon light. I used to think, she said quietly, that home was a place, somewhere you belonged by birth or by choice, a piece of ground with your name on it. She looked at the ring. I was running so long I forgot that wasn't right. What is it? Cole said. Clara looked up at him. It's the first person who made me feel safe enough to stop, she said. Cole looked at her for a moment. This woman who had walked into his collapsing, grief-silenced, debt-pressed ranch and refused to leave it the way she'd found it. Who had turned frozen ground and taught a boy, and cooked enough food for 20, and carried a dead man's justice stitched into her coat for 2 years without once letting it break her stride. He put his arms around her. She pressed her face against his chest and stood there on the hill above Silver Creek while the ranch moved and breathed and lived below them, and for the first time in a very long time, neither of them was carrying anything alone. The months that followed had the quality of something being built right slowly, with attention, without shortcuts. The trial of Vincent Hale and 14 co-defendants ran for 6 weeks in a federal courthouse in Denver. Clara gave testimony for 3 days. She sat in that witness chair with her hands flat on the rail and her voice even and her eyes direct, and she told the truth about every single thing she had seen and recorded and carried. And Vincent Hale sat 20 feet away and tried to look like a man being falsely accused, and could not quite manage it because the documents Clara had preserved were exact, and the accounts she had memorized were precise, and there was no version of those numbers that could be made to say something other than what they said. Hale was convicted on 11 counts. The sentencing hearing was still pending when the news reached Silver Creek, in a telegram from Bridges, that Cole read aloud at the supper table. Nobody cheered. Nobody celebrated loudly. Hector poured whiskey into 5 glasses and passed them around, and they drank in the particular quiet of people who have been through something large together and understand that the end of it is not a party. It's a settling. A weight coming down from a height it had no right to occupy for as long as it did. Billy held his glass with his good arm and looked at Clara across the table. "Is it over?" he said. Clara looked at him. At this boy who had grown considerably in the month since a bullet had passed through his shoulder and left him standing. Who handled the ranch accounts now with a competence that had made Cole quietly triple what he was paying him. Who had taken to wearing his hair combed on Sundays, which no one mentioned, though everyone noticed. "Yes," she said. "It's over." Billy nodded. He drank his whiskey with the gravity of someone who understood he had earned it. On the morning the last nail went into the new barn's final interior fitting, a Saturday in June, the Montana summer running long and warm and extravagant, Cole took Clara to the hill. He did it early before anyone else was moving in the particular quality of light that belonged to that hour. The hour he had always called his own. The hour Daniel used to joke he was more in love with than any person. They stood side by side at the top of the hill and looked at Silver Creek together. The barn stood where the old one had stood, different and solid and new. The garden below the house was fully up now. The peas had been, as Clara predicted, ready in May, and the tomatoes on the south wall were more successful than either of them had expected, a fact that pleased Clara with a quiet proprietary satisfaction. The hands were beginning to stir in the bunkhouse. The horses were moving in the east pasture. Smoke was starting from the kitchen chimney because Billy, who had taken to rising early since recovering from his wound, had gone down and started the stove, the way Clara had showed him, because that was what you did at Silver Creek Ranch when you were part of it. You kept the fire going. You showed up before you were asked. You stayed. Cole looked at his ranch, the ranch his father built, and Daniel loved, and he had held through grief and debt and attack and the long winter of believing nothing good was going to come again. And then he looked at the woman standing beside him, with his mother's ring on her finger and the Montana morning in her face, and what he felt was not complicated. It was the simplest thing he had felt in years. "Ready," he said. Clara looked at him. That look, direct, unguarded, certain. "I've been ready," she said, "since I walked up your road." They walked back down together toward the kitchen, toward the smoke, toward the sound of Silver Creek Ranch, waking up into another day of being exactly what it had always been capable of being, alive and warm and full of people who had chosen to stay. And the lonely cowboy, who had once told himself he'd stopped believing in staying, and the quiet cook who had spent 2 years learning that survival was not the same as living, began the life they had both believed for too long. In too many cold and separate rooms was something that only happened to other people. It happened to them. On a Montana morning on a hill above the ranch they had saved together, with the whole long, beautiful rest of it still ahead, and that every single hard and real and costly piece of it was exactly enough.